To begin with, I want you to look at this book, which was compiled by Gladys Bogue, and it is a book that shows our branch of the family from Alfred Day and his wife Lydia Calkins' day up until the time it was published in 1970. This book is a continuation of the book that was published originally in 1848, which is the genealogical register of Robert Day of Hartford, Connecticut, who died in the year of 1648, and this book was printed originally in Northampton, Massachusetts in 1848. And it gives the family register back to Robert Day, who was the first Day in America, that settled in America. Alfred Day was born in 1794. We have here the arithmetic copybook, which he had at the time that he went to a country school near Wilbraham, Massachusetts. At that time, the only arithmetic book they had would be the one which the teacher had. The teacher would write on the blackboard the problems, arithmetic problems, and the students would copy them in a book which they made so that they would have a permanent copy of each type of arithmetic problem which they had learned at that time. I am not sure what year this was or how old Alfred Day was when he made this copybook. However, he must have been at least in the 6th grade because of the type of problems which they had. One that really amazes me is when they got into problems using the rule of 3. The rule of 3 was a name for the problems that when I went to school we called them proportions. This is a word that evidently has now been dropped, because I understand from some of the younger people that they work these problems, and the name proportions was never used. Now also, at that time, we have a book here that was put together by Lydia Calkins, and this is, it says here, this is the property of Lydia Calkins. The names of her father's family and their births and deaths, marriages also, start of state of Massachusetts, county of Hampton. Where they lived was right near the line, and between Hampton and Wilbraham, and although they called Wilbraham their post office, they must have actually lived in Hampton County. They show here the Calkins family, and giving dates of births and marriages and so forth. And this is one of the records which we have today, which we base our ancestry upon. We also want to show at this time another another antique, which is what remains of the gun that Alfred Day bought in Springfield, Massachusetts, before he and his wife started out with horses and a wagon on their trip from Massachusetts across into Ohio to make their new home near Manitou Corners in Ohio. Okay.
Well, but this is more your dad, isn't it? But he.
In 1868, which was 6 years after our grandfather, Levi Day, returned from the Civil War, he married Ellen Mills, who lived in Pittsfield, Ohio. Ellen Mills' parents were Richard Mills and Harriet Bedford Mills, who were born in England. Can you shut it off?
Mm-hmm.
They were both born in 1809 and were married in 1832 at the parish church in Sleaford, England. They were dissatisfied with the life in England and decided to come to this country. And they sailed from Liverpool, England in 1845 and came to Pittsfield, Ohio in October of that same year. At the time that they immigrated, they had off. Okay. You can turn it on again.
Mm-hmm.
They had 8 children. The youngest, Lucy Bedford Mills, died on the way over and was buried in the sea. Ellen was born in this country, and born in this country and was their only child that survived after birth. Oh, wait a minute, that's wrong. Can I do that? November 5th, 1848. And was 20 years old when she married our Levi Day. Lived at Castle Rock, Minnesota, on a farm that Levi had purchased and was close to the home of his parents and also close to the home of his close to the homes of his brothers and sisters. You cut it.
Hold on. Okay, Dad, we're looking at this family portrait of Levi and Ellen Day's family of 9 sons and a daughter. And who's that little boy in the middle?
Levi. Levi W.
And there was 9 sons. And I understand that all of those suits are made by Ellen? Is that correct?
No, there are 8 sons and 1 girl.
Oh, 8 sons, right. Which one is my grandfather?
There.
There's Walter. He's about 10 years old there.
I would say so, yes.
That would make this about 1890.
Hmm?
This would be about 1890.
Yes. About 1890.
Now, all the brothers went to the academy, but these are not their uniforms. Is that correct?
Yes.
This oldest brother on the left here is George. Now what is this?
Wait a minute. Can I pick it up?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, here you have...
That's right. That's George.
See, now there's...
That's George and this is Herbert.
Right, now what can you tell us about George as the oldest one?
Well, George became a dentist and practiced dentistry for many years in Farmington, Minnesota.
And is that where...
His wife was Lucy Whittier, And they had 2 children, Marion, who later married
C.J. Iverson?
huh?
C.J. Iverson?
What was the initials?
C. Iverson? C.J. Iverson?
Yes, that's right, Clarence J. Iverson. And his son Whittier, who married Emily West.
Okay, so that's Uncle George, and then next to Uncle George there is
Judson.
Judson.
And Judson married Blanche Finch, and they had 7 girls and 2 boys.
They lived right across the street from Grandpa and Grandma Day.
Yes.
This would
And
be on the other side of this road.
huh?
Would it be on the other side of this road here? Would it be on the other side?
Well, this was the Day house,
Mm-hmm.
which is also shown here.
Up in the...
This house was Alfred Day's house. Was the father of Levi Day. Alfred Day was married to Lydia Calkins.
I'll put that there. This is Alfred's house, there next to Alfred. Now, who was it that was in the Revolutionary War?
Levi Day.
No, that's Civil War.
Pardon me.
The Revolutionary War.
In the Revolutionary War was Alfred Day's father-in-law, the father of Lydia Calkins. And we have the pension record of James Calkins, Lydia's father, with his record during the Revolutionary War. Was a veteran of the War of 1812. And Alfred Day's youngest son, Levi Day, was a veteran of the Civil War.
Is there a story there about the Civil War and Grandpa Levi?
Well, Levi Day was taken sick in Mississippi, near Corinth, Mississippi, and was laid for and was confined to a field hospital which was using a barn for a hospital, and was discharged from the Army when he was diagnosed as having you see this where my memory fails. He was diagnosed for having consumption. He was carried on a stretcher onto the steamboat there on the Tennessee River, and the doctor told him that if he lived to get back to Minnesota, and he did not expect that he would be making the trip alive, then he should not look forward to living more than 2 years at the most. He outlived the doctor's expectations by a good many years, as he survived to the age of 101.
Is that because of all the honey he ate?
Well, I don't know.
What's this picture over here with this bush with Grandpa and Grandma? Is that their anniversary picture? One here, that snowball bush. Possibly, huh?
I don't know what year that these were taken, but
What can you tell me about that wishing well, or that well, I should say?
well, that was a well that was used there at the place at Clinton Falls for many years, and when Grandfather Levi was unable to use the open well any longer, he had the well filled in and a pump installed. I don't know. If that was if those pictures were taken in 1918 or not. They may have been.
Second here, I gotta unzoom my. Is the red light on there?
Huh?
Is the red light on?
Yes.
Okay.
I have the salt and pepper shaker that Richard Mills and his wife brought over on the sailboat in 1844. Now, these were probably given to them at the time that they were married as wedding presents, and because they were prized by them. And I wish to show how coarse, how large the holes were in the, especially the salt shaker, as the salt used at that time was very coarse. We also have a chest here that came that they brought from England. Now there are only two chests that I know of that are still available, and Philip Day has one, and this is the other one. I am not sure whether this was just a trunk for their belongings, or if it was what they called a food box, as at that time the sailing ship did not have provisions to feed the passengers coming over, and people were expected to bring their own food along. And what they generally had was dried biscuits that were toasted or dried completely so that they would not become moldy during the voyage, and also cheese that had been dried, allowed to dry so that it would keep better. This was not a very luxurious diet, but it seemed like there were many people that survived on it during the ocean crossing. Levi E. Day came home to Castle Rock in August 1862. He was in very poor health. In fact, his mother did not recognize him when she looked out the window and saw him walking down the road and toward their house. Although Ellen Mills was born in this country and was never able to make a trip to England, she did carry on a correspondence with some of her cousins who still remained in England. I am holding here a letter that she wrote in 1903, and it is postmarked at Clinton Falls, Minnesota. This letter was saved in England, and I was given it by Harry Standeven, who lives in Halifax, England. Harry Standeven has a son who is a professor of mathematics at, I can't remember the name of the town, the university in England.
Ipswich.
Well, no, it's not at Ipswich.
Oh, right. It's Essex.
Starts with C.
University of Essex.
Huh? No.
Isn't?
No, it is. Well, it's a university in England anyway. His name is John Standeven, and he and his wife Joanne have been over here to the United States several times on visits, and they have 2 children, Mark and Kate. My granddaughter, Beth Ann Lindell, during her college career, went over to England and stayed with them and attended the
University.
Huh?
The university.
They attended the university for a semester, which made her college career quite different from most others in that she was with in school. But
Did you want to show a little bit from the letter?
show which?
Read a little bit that's in the letter.
Photostat here of the letter which grandmother Ellen wrote, and it is quite lengthy, and There's nothing particularly right here.
Okay.
We have another branch of the Day family. With a connection back to the Nickerson family, one of the earliest families on Cape Cod. Temperance Nickerson was a daughter of Nathaniel Nickerson and Harriet and who was married to Catherine Stewart in 1735.
Okay, go ahead.
What?
We'll start, yeah.
As you see, this is the Nickerson family book, which is another group of our ancestors. Nathaniel Nickerson had a daughter, Temperance Nickerson, who was married to Ensign Rogers. And they lived at Chatham, Massachusetts, which is out on Cape Cod. And Ensign Rogers was a seafaring man who died at sea. It isn't known what happened, but she became a widow at an early age with 2 sons. She met one of our Mayflower ancestors, William Snow, who had lost his wife through a sickness, and they were married. Temperance and William Snow had one daughter who was Temperance Snow, who married our direct line ancestor, Alvin Day. You will note in the Alfred Day book by Gladys Bold, the Alfred Day book, which was compiled by Gladys Bold. On page, in the back of the book, a picture of the boyhood home of Alfred Day, which was built by Alvin Day. Alvin Day and his wife Temperance lived here, and their son Alfred was in our direct line ancestry. Out.
Just a little clarification. This is Alfred Day's house that he built 35 years before 1900. And some of the family members there. Picture of Alfred Day, father of Levi Day, who built this home also in Castle Rock, Minnesota, with his family pictured there. And our grandfather Walter seated on the grass on the right-hand side. This also is a picture of the Levi Day home in Castle Rock, Minnesota. The next home that they moved to was in Clinton Falls, which was closer to the Pillsbury Academy where the Day children all attended. And this is that property, that home in Clinton Falls. Okay.
George Day's.
Okay, the home of George Day, the eldest son of Levi Day.
No, Bert was the eldest son.
Oh, Bert was the oldest son. Was?
Yeah.
Okay. It was in Farmington, and Dad just said that that was a meeting place for the family members. And this is these are pictures of the George Day home in Farmington. This was also Levi Day's home for 10 years. Is that correct?
Huh?
He lived there for 10 years?
You lived there about 10 years.
Yeah. Farmington, Minnesota is close to Castle Rock.
Am I supposed to say something?
Sure. Anything you want. Go ahead, be profound.
Yeah, can you remember any birthdays when you were a little boy?
Oh yes, I can remember that. I went out to pick wild strawberries in the morning, and then for a strawberry shortcake, which would be my birthday cake.
That wasn't the time that you broke your leg, was it?
No, I didn't. No, that wasn't. That was the time that I got run over with a wagon. Picking rock in the field. I was in my 4th grade at that time. I took some rocks up to the wagon and put them in between the wheels, the wagon wheels. And for some reason the horses would jump. And the wagon wheel went over my leg.
Oh no.
So you were in a cast?
No, I wasn't called a cast. No. But couldn't step on it for 6-7 weeks.
Some kind of a fracture. You really had...
Actually, it was a bone in my foot. It wasn't a leg bone. But the wagon went over the side of my foot.
Yeah, furniture.
Were summers pretty busy for you on the farm when you were a boy?
Oh, we always had plenty to do.
So even when you were a little boy, you worked really hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents weren't slave drivers.
Mine were.
Well, what were your chores when you were a little boy?
Well, carrying water
From the pump?
from the pump.
In buckets?
Yeah,
Wooden buckets or metal buckets?
metal bucket. No, we're past the wooden bucket stage.
Into the, stainless steel, galvanized steel.
No, not just stainless steel, galvanized metal.
What's your fondest memories when you of being living on the farm when you were a boy?
Lots of land to roam on, and there was always something that we could be doing. We made a tent out of some canvas that we had. I don't know where the canvas came from. We made a tent out of it. And Morris and I used to go up and sleep in the tent in the summertime. And the mosquitoes got too thick. And we'd get up and go in the house. If there was a breeze, there'd be less mosquitoes, And sometimes during the night, the breeze would slow down and it'd be real quiet, and then the mosquitoes would come in so thick that we'd get up and make a dash for the house.
Did you have insulation in your house in the winter?
Insulation? Well, we used to put up some boards and posts and boards around the outside.
What about fire? Two things come to mind here. The fire that the Moans had, and then you were telling me once about Christmas Eve, you had candles on your Christmas tree?
Yeah, we made candles on the Christmas trees.
Well, how did that?
Huh?
What was the deal on that?
Well, they thought the best thing to have for fire prevention for that was to have a mop pail full of fresh water with a mop sitting in it. So if anything the fire should start on the tree, you pick up the mop and swamp around and put the fire out. That really worked good. But I don't recall being present any time when that was used. There was one thing about it though, that you see the candles that they used were not so long. And we would put up the Christmas tree the day before Christmas, and we'd use it, light the candles Christmas Eve, and then save enough of the candle, not so much so that we could have a few minutes of candle on Christmas evening. And then the tree would probably stay up a week or so. The tree would dry out. One of the things that was, you see, by using the first 2 evenings, the tree was still quite green. And after it had been sitting there for a week, I just pretty dried out. And they go pretty fast before they got on fire.
How did the Mon home catch on fire?
Well, I really don't know, and I don't think they knew either. The thing was that, as I remember the story, that was years before I was born. Horses and wagon, which was ordinary at that time, and when they came home, the house burned down. No idea how, if it could have been a chimney fire that started one day, or what it was. Could have even been somebody would come along with leaning towards arson and set fire to it. They never knew either what happened.
What did they do? Was everything destroyed?
Oh, completely. Everything they had was,
What happened?
except the clothes they had on them, well, they built a little house. I remember, you see, this happened when my grandfather's they had all the children home except Anna, the oldest daughter. And that would have been Sarah, my mother, and Julia, and Oscar. There'd be 4 children, and my grandfather. My grandmother had died in South Dakota previously, and I really don't know what they did immediately. But they built this little bit of a house. It was quite near where the house was that burned down. And then they lived in that for a while. But my mother and Sarah went to Crookston to normal school there, and I started teaching country school, the two of them. And Oscar went out west with one of his uncles and ended up in Kalispell. And then my mother went out to Kalispell, and as soon as my father had finished up his homesteading, proving his homestead, so that he got title to the land, he went out there and to Kalispell too, they got married.
Is that where Morris was born?
Yeah,
In Hiram.
yeah,
But you were born in Bagley.
yeah.
You still recording with him?
Okay.
You know, I'd like to have it on the record, the story of Levi Day when he was, when he came back from the Civil War.
Well, his story is that his mother looked out the window and saw somebody coming down the road walking, and said, well, that couldn't be Levi. He said, that's just a young boy. He's so thin. And she went back to doing something else, and finally he came up and opened the door. But he was so thin that he was hardly well, he'd been sick so long. Well, you know, the story was that he was down in Mississippi, and they carried him onto the riverboat with a stretcher. And the doctor told him, if you live to get to Minnesota, and I don't expect you'll make the trip alive, then don't expect to live more than 2 years at the most.
How old was he?
Then, his early 20s.
He had been in the Civil War for 3 years or so? No.
Well, actually, I don't really know. He had the previous year, no, because he was enrolled there at Fort Snelling, and the company that he was in, they marched up to a place up by outside the Little Falls. It's still there, it's an army base.
Fort Ripley?
Fort Ripley. They marched up there to Fort Ripley and spent the fall and winter training. And then in the spring they came down and they took them on river boats down to Mississippi. I guess this is about it. And he got sick down there from the water almost immediately, and then they had a barn that they were using for a hospital, and he got well, imagine pneumonia, and finally they diagnosed that he had consumption. And that was the reason why they figured that he would never live very long. And by the way, he lived to 101. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Now, and you say hi to all the folks. You bet. You bet. Right, bye.
Roll 'em.
This is a story about the birth of Thomas Arthur Willard, who was born, as I recall, in 1862 at Castle Rock, Minnesota. It was shortly after his Uncle Levi had come home from the Civil War, having been discharged because he had been so sick, and there was little chance. The doctors would not believe that he ever would recover completely. And he was staying with his parents. On the farm there, south of Farmington, in the Castle Rock area. Next to the Alfred Day farm was the Willard farm. And Mrs. Willard was Esther Day, the oldest daughter of Alfred Day. And it was next, their farm was adjoining the farm that Alfred Day had, where Levi was staying. Esther was having a baby, and there was a problem, and so Levi went over to the Willard Day house and sat in the kitchen. And after some time, the midwife came out carrying a bundle and said the baby had arrived, but it had died, and she laid the bundle on the kitchen table. And she went back in to see what she could do to save the mother. Levi sat there in the kitchen and suddenly became aware of a sound that sounded more like a and some movement in the blankets. And so he got up and opened the blankets and looked, and the baby was alive. He went to the door of the bedroom and told the midwife that he would take the baby home to his mother because she was busy with trying to save Esther. So Levi carried the baby home, and the baby was grew up and was Thomas Arthur Willard, who made the first storage battery that could be used in an automobile. Thomas Edison was the inventor of the storage batteries, but the other batteries they had at that time were those that were used in the railroad depots to operate the telegraph. These batteries that Thomas Arthur Willard made had more punch to them and could be used to start a car. The first car that he sold the batteries to was the Buick Motor Company, who had the first self-starter on an automobile. T.A. Willard was quite successful and operated the Willard Battery Company in Cleveland, Ohio, until sometime during the 1930 Depression, when he sold out to another company and moved to California, where he died in the late 1940s. His estate, at the time of his death, his estate was valued at $28 million. Thank you. Thomas Arthur Willard's hobby was exploring the ruins of the Maya Indians in
Yucatan?
Yucatan, no, Guatemala. Down there, Merida, Mexico. And he spent many years. He spent his winter vacations for many years going down to Chichen Itza. And at that time, they were digging up the ruins and whatever they could find in the bottom of the sacred well there at Chichen Itza. They had a steam-driven crane with a clamshell that they picked up all of as much of what they could get at in the bottom of the well. I guess that's it.
What kind of discoveries did he make?
Huh?
What discoveries? Did he discover things?
Well, they discovered a lot of things that were brought back to the museum, to a museum in Boston. And as far as I know, there are a lot of those things still in the museum. I've never seen them myself. 3 elderly men that visited quite often and with each other, and they were pretty good friends. And one day the conversation got around to what was the greatest invention that was ever made. And the first one said, well, I think television is. Just think, you can sit in your own living room and you can see things that are happening all over the world. You can really enjoy so much from your television. He says there cannot be anything better than that. And the next one says, no, he says, I think the automobile is the greatest invention because you can drive here and there all over whenever you want to, and you don't have to wait to catch a bus or get on a railroad train or anything like that. No, he said, I really enjoy my automobile, and I think that that was the greatest invention. And then they asked Ole, what do you think is the greatest invention? Well, Ole says, you know, I've been thinking about it, and both of you were talking about what you thought was the greatest invention. But I think the thermos bottle is the greatest invention there ever was.
What's a thermos?
Okay, which?
That's the way they said thermos.
Terminus.
Yeah. Well, why in the world would you think that the thermos bottle was so great? Well, he says, you know, in the summertime, when I'm out haying, and I'm hot and sweaty, and I get awful thirsty, and I open that thermos bottle, and here's nice ice cold lemonade to drink, and oh, it tastes so good. It makes me feel so good. He says, I can't think of anything better than that. And then at the same time, he says, you know, in the wintertime, when it gets real cold and it's 30 below zero and I'm out cutting pulpwood, he said, you know, I get awful chilly sometime, and I can open the thermos bottle, and you know, it's got hot coffee in it. And that really tastes great, and it warms you up so good. And why do I think this thermos bottle is so great? I could never figure out how it can tell when to have cold lemonade and when to have hot coffee.